Hello everyone, what's going on? My name is Timpedia. Welcome to my 2019, my 2019 28th birthday special. Now, for those of you who've watched for a long time, you know that for the past few years, every year I like to take a topic of something like books, television, movies, games, etc., and tell you guys some of my favorites as a way for me to kind of talk about things outside of Let's Plays that I don't really get the chance to talk about, or kind of things that maybe come up on the TNT podcast, but I know most people don't listen to that. So I figured this is always a fun time to sit back, relax, and talk about some things that I just really, really love. I don't remember, man, I'm really bad at this. I think I did games, books, previous years, and last year was a special Star Wars focused one. That's not happening this year, although there is a special separate video coming for that. But I did want to list, I realized that, for a large part of my life personally, television was a big thing when I was a kid, and then it kind of fell away when I was in college, when I was starting to do my own YouTube things back in 2009 when I first started, my God. But also, I just spent a large portion of my life, once I started college, I didn't really have TV, and so it was mostly just YouTube that I watched. And then I was home for a little while, didn't watch any serious series during the time because my family didn't have Netflix yet. And by the time I was done with school, it was like, well, I watched some things on Netflix, binged some stuff, but I don't watch much non-Netflix bingeable television these days. But I realized, with my girlfriend and I living together for a while now, we've been watching more television shows together, both, in this case, as you guys can probably tell from the title, animated and non-animated. This is going to be part one. This is going to be the animated list. Check out part two, either out already a few hours later, or if you're watching this later, well, hey, it's already out in the playlist. But I wanted to break it down because in the last few years, I've had multiple friends and now my girlfriend pushing me more and more towards watching some anime. And while I'm definitely not in as deep as some other people I know, I also have watched some, at least, and I liked a lot of what I saw, but I wanted to kind of talk about animated shows that I love. In this case, I'm pretty sure I have, let's see, I'm looking at this, I guess 2 things that could constitute non-anime. So I'm gonna go through all the anime that I like, all these animated shows that I like, and then part 2 is going to be the live action stuff that I really, really enjoy. But yeah, so kick back and relax and enjoy my top 10 animated television shows. Now, to preface, I want to clarify that these top 10s over the years as I've made them do evolve over time. Unfortunately, this being the internet, every top 10 changes and moves, and in this case, I just wanted to say that none of this stuff is in a particular order. I don't think I could really sit down and put these in order without rewatching them all, and this isn't my job, so I don't have time for that, but I did want to start off with a few honorable mentions of shows that I enjoy, but I don't think I could quite put them in my top 10 over any of the other stuff. First off, we have an anime that is, as of this recording, a new episode just came out today, and I haven't watched it yet, but so far, my girlfriend and I have been enjoying for the past 2 or 3 months how I was reincarnated as a slime. It's been super fun. It's another one of those kind of video gamey shows, kind of like Sword Art, although Sword Art's nowhere on this list. But it's just one of those shows that it's just a fun time to watch. Just kick back and watch this overpowered slime just kill things and be confused because it's a Japanese businessman in a slime in a world with magic and everything. It's just a fun time. And it could, depending on how the series goes, it could someday end up on my top 10. But for now, there's just not nearly enough of it. We're like halfway through season 1. And who knows if there's even going to be more. So yeah, I can't put it on my top 10 yet. Another brand new anime that just finished was Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, which is another insanely stupid title that means everyone's clicking out of this video as fast as they can. But this anime actually is only not in the top 10 because the first season ended and there's apparently going to be a movie, but the ending of the first season was not super satisfying. But the reason it's on the list at all for the honorable mentions is because the first few episodes of the show are an amazing ramp-up period of just quality. And the big part of the reason that the show sticks with you is because of how emotionally resonant and real feeling it is. So, while again another show that's new and can't be on the top 10 yet, I wanted to just throw it on here as an honorable mention. Two more. This one probably could be, but it's just so short. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. My friend Luigi, this is probably one of his favorite shows ever. I just got him the Blu-ray of this for Christmas. Absolutely a super fun show. It's one of the shows that you can just put on and relax. And that's definitely a theme that you'll see across both of these top 10s. There are just some shows that are just great to turn on and just relax and laugh along and have a good time. And Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is one of those. It's just so whimsical and fun, and everything's drawn so cute, and it's beautifully animated. I know I'm kind of breezing over these shows, but these are still worth watching, but we'll get to the top 10. And the last one is actually probably a little controversial almost, depending on who you talk to. Voltron, the new Voltron series on Netflix, just finished a few weeks ago. The final season released, and my girlfriend and I watched it. And honestly, if I had only seen the first few seasons of Voltron, it might be in the top 10, but the last few seasons, in my opinion, just kind of dropped the ball. It's unfortunately one of those shows that could have ended earlier and possibly even been better. But I gotta say, though, I just feel like the first few seasons really are quite good, and it was a really fun show, and like watching them all shout "Form Voltron," everything. It's silly and it seems like a kid's cartoon, but honestly, some of the themes were fairly mature, and it was pretty well animated, and overall just another fun show that unfortunately was kind of let down by the ending. But enough of honorable mentions. Let's move on to number 10. Now, as I said, these aren't in any particular order. These are just the order they popped into my head, and I wrote them down because, like I said, it would take a horrible time to put these all together. But number 10 is one of the most fun anime I've watched in a long time. It's just so relaxing and fun. Cells at Work. Cells at Work is such a blast to watch because it's actually watching the functions of the body, like how your body fights infection, how it deals with different situations, bacteria, viruses, and it's all shown through this cutesy anime. The platelets are some of the cutest things on the planet. I found a rendition of the outro song that I listen to all the time. It's one of my favorite little bits of music to listen to. It's on my driving playlist. The information gets a little cluttered at time, where there's just a narrator and this giant subtitle and also stuck on screen. It just keeps going for this information. It gets a little dry, but it's just such a fun, different take on a show to watch, where you're spending all this time just kind of subconsciously learning, but also just enjoying watching the characters. Like Red Blood Cell is so haphazard and gets lost constantly, but she has a good heart. And White Blood Cell, who's just probably my favorite character, and then the killer T cells are hilarious, and they're all just so well done. They play into their characteristics so well. It's one of the most intriguing shows I've ever watched, and I honestly can't wait for more. They just came out with their special winter episode about the common cold, and it was just such a blast to see them again. And honestly, there's actually a plan with me, my girlfriend, and two of our friends to cosplay some of the characters this year because we all had so much fun, and it's such a simple show to cosplay. So, yeah, definitely. Cells at Work, I highly recommend it if you're looking for something that's not the usual anime over-the-topness, like the characters are a little goofy, but if you're just looking for something that actually is kind of rooted in reality a little bit, and is well animated and is cute and just it's not a lot of stress. Cells at Work is a ton of fun. Going from non-stressful to completely stressful and intense, the only sports show that I've ever really enjoyed was Haikyuu, the high school volleyball anime show. Man, I never thought watching, I've never really understood sports animes. I know that they're supposed to all be about like the characters and everything like that, but none of them really grabbed me in terms of what is on screen or the actual relations of the characters and things like that. But with Haikyuu, they just ramp it up to 11. They have these they impart this sense of speed and power so well into all these insane moves. on the volleyball court, when in reality they would take like 3 seconds to go through, but they just amp it up so much, and you just love all these characters. The main rivalry, all the rest of the team. One of my favorite things in the whole show is the training arc where the crows go and train with the guys in Tokyo, and they all just become friends and just play volleyball together, and they all just love playing volleyball. It's kind of wholesome, but at the same time, the actual matches are so intense, and like there's the characters who are the bad guys, and oh my god, I can't even, I don't want to even get into it, who does what, but it's one of the only shows that ever made me want to get up and do something, and Haikyuu really does make you want to get up and play volleyball, because it just makes it look so exciting and so intense and so much strategy to it. I know every sport says that, but watching it unfold on camera is just such a blast to see. It's so exciting, and you get so into the heads of these characters and how they do, like how they plan out their moves and all these things and what each position does, and it makes you want to learn and play volleyball. And no sports show, movie, anime, any game, anything outside of like NHL hits ever made me want to play a sport. So props to Haikyuu, and I hope you watch it. Speaking of things that make you want to be involved in what you're watching, Food Wars. Now, I have to preface this by saying, if you try to watch Food Wars or have tried to watch Food Wars, give it a few episodes. The first episode is the most over-the-top, pretty much it is overly sexualized what happens in the first episode, but every episode of that shows more restraint. Not total restraint, but more restraint. And if you can get past the slightly ridiculously sexualized shots, the show is just a blast to just watch. It's another one of these shows like Haikyuu and Cells at Work, where while most of looking at the list, all except kind of one of the rest of the shows on this list are about fighting. And yes, Japan does fighting super well. I just finished the Yakuza series on YouTube as well. Like, fighting is a super well done thing in Japan, because they always do the speed lines, and the anime makes the punches look so strong and everything like that, and it looks so intense and exciting. But Food Wars is like Haikyuu and Cells at Work, where they make you want to watch even when it's not physical combat. Watching these chefs cook these crazy dishes, and just like with Cells at Work or Haikyuu, you know that theoretically you could do something like that. You could cook up a meal. You could plan out like a new thing that you want to try mixing together. One of Yukihira's main things is he mixes up disgusting foods just to push the boundaries of what food can be. And it's a funny thing that he does with his dad, and it's you know that's part of the process of an actual chef, is trying things, and sometimes they fail and are disgusting, but sometimes you just make delicious food. And it's just so much fun to watch this process unfold and watch what's going on at the academy, and everyone's evolving like relationships with each other, and him trying to get Erina to like turn into the group, and slowly she doesn't hate everybody anymore, and she's not elitist, and then her dad and everything, and the arcs, and it's so much fun to watch the creativity. That's the key thing of these three shows. Like, the other shows kind of get by on well animated fights and story, which are important and still exist here, but there's a level of reality here which is just so enjoyable. And like, hell, my girlfriend earlier last year bought me Yukihira's shirt from this show, and sometimes I like to wear it because we also started doing that Hello Fresh thing, and I put the shirt on and it just feels like you're getting into it, man. You're like sitting at the stove flipping food, and it's exciting, and it helps amp you up, and it's the show just really imparts the fun of cooking, and that's awesome. So yeah, if you can stomach the first few episodes, I promise Food Wars gets really, really fun and really, really good. Switching, like I said, to the more violent shows on the list, this is the only show that is not a show from Japan. And out of the upcoming shows, it is one of only 3 of the remaining shows, 2 more shows after this, that I watched in English. This is Castlevania, the Netflix show. Now, I have to preface this. When I was growing up, I had not a ton of gaming experience. Everyone talks about, I played Mario, I played Zelda, I played Castlevania, that kind of thing. Like, all these games that a lot of people played, I didn't do young gaming. My dad had an Intellivision, so I didn't have characters or anything like that. I had, like, oh god, I can't remember the names. I had, like, the Dungeons and Dragons game that my dad would play sometimes, where it was just a 2D guy walking through a cave, and you would just hear these crazy sound effects and die. And I never had anything of my own until an N64, and then I played a little bit of Pokemon, and I played just random stuff. A lot of my games were given to me by, like, either my cousin, my rich cousin, of course, everyone has the rich uncle and rich cousin, or I just bought games, and I would just play them. Like Star Fox 64, I played, and it was fun, but I never became super attached to any of these characters or series. I never went back. I never had the resources to do it. And then, so I never got into Castlevania as a gaming series. I always heard about them, but I never played a Castlevania game. I had already missed the boat on that. And then, out of the blue, in 2017, this 4-episode Castlevania series comes out on Netflix, and I heard a few good things, and my girlfriend and I had just moved to Ohio, and we were like, let's watch it. And we loved it. And it was so good. And we were both so excited when we heard that next year, already a season 2, double the length from 4 to 8 episodes, was coming out. And we were both super pumped for it. And it totally delivered. The voice actors from Alucard, Sypha, and, oh my god, Trevor. I couldn't remember which Belmont it was. Trevor, Richard Armitage, they all kill it. The writing is so, I don't want to call it fresh, but it's so real almost. Like when Alucard and Trevor are flipping each other off, fuck you, man, fuck you. Like, and they don't even really like each other, but you could see how that back and forth is already developing. It's, man, and I think one of my favorite fight scenes of the entire year is in the 7th episode of this, pretty much the climactic battle. The whole episode is just a rolling fight, and when the music plays from the Castlevania games, I never played Castlevania, but I've watched the Angry Video Games Nerds retrospective multiple times, so I recognize the music from the end of every Castlevania game, or the main theme, I guess, of the series. And hearing that remixed over the fighting that was super well animated, and all the moves are super creative, like Trevor with the chain, just like I think it was magical, but when he throws out the chain and does like these crazy hand movements to like wrap it around and get the angles he wants, and then it tinks off like the stone floor, stabs into a vampire and just explodes and blows him up, and then Alucard flying around, turning into a wolf, shooting his sword, and oh my god, Sypha with the ice and fire, oh my god, and then when oh my god, I don't even want to spoil it. If you have access to a Netflix account, you have no reason not to watch this. It's 12 20-minute episodes. That's 4 hours. That's nothing. That's 2 movies. And I highly doubt you'll regret it. It's such a blast to watch. I still rewatch. It's become one of the things where I rewatch the last 2 episodes of this show. There's shows later on this list, 3 of them actually, where I rewatch scenes every now and then, or 4. I lied. Where I rewatch scenes and they still feel punchy later, and I keep rewatching this final fight in the final episode because they just are so well done. I can't stop recommending, if you're looking for something that's not in Japanese, not from Japan, but is animated and is really, really good, Castlevania is probably my pick right now. All right, we're almost halfway through the main list. Actually, this is sort of halfway. Number 6. This one I've talked about a couple times on the podcast. I've actually argued with Friedman about it. But number 6 is the video game anime I would pick over Sword Art Online, Overlord, where instead of just random good guy who goes to a world and is, I'm magically badass, Overlord is about a guy who runs a guild of only people who aren't human, and when his game shuts down, he gets sent to a real world where all of his AI buddies are now real, and they have to establish themselves in this new world, and they're the villains, pretty much. And yet, you go back and hang out with them, and you're like, oh man, this is so much fun, but man, they just killed all those people. Overlord is just a total blast. It's so much fun to watch. It's probably, in terms of overall quality, the lowest on this list. It's probably the most likely for people to try to pick it up and just not be able to make it through, and that's reasonable. Freeman himself is the biggest weeb I know, and he does not like the show. But I just can't get over how fun it is watching them all use this god-tier magic, but they're the bad guys, and they're setting a bad precedent. Like, there's this, the first arc of the second season is, let's just take over this group of people because we want to try out a spell for making undead. We want to see if we can make stronger undead. So let's just exterminate a population of non-humans. Sure. It's so absurd and so fun, and watching, like, I personally, my guy is Demiurge. My girlfriend actually bought his mask from the end of season 2 for me to wear. If I can ever pad it out with foam and stuff like that. Someday I'd like to cosplay as Demiurge because he's just so cool with his orange suit and his cool metal tail and his sick diamond glasses and his slicked back hair. I fucking love Demiurge, and he's such a smart guy. But yeah, just watching all these super powerful beings like just grovel at the main character's feet, and he's just like, oh god, what do I do? I don't know. How do I... He has scenes where he's practicing doing like imposing ways of sitting down in front of his mirror in his bedroom, so that when he does it in front of people, they are intimidated by how well he can sit in his chair. It's so ridiculous and fun. It's the only anime that I'm worried that the newest season 3 came out earlier this year, or earlier in 2018. And a lot of people think that it's never coming back as an anime. So I started actually reading the light novels because I'm a huge punk, to try to help, because this is like the one show that I'm like, this one might not come back. All the rest on this list, except for maybe Food Wars, unfortunately, I'm almost positive will come back. Maybe Cells at Work too, or Haikyuu. They better come back. I mean, I want all these to come back, but I don't think any of these are done except for... Yeah... There's only two shows on this list that are totally done, and that's fine. The rest of them, hope they all come back. But this is one of the most in danger shows, and you can tell there's some bad CGI, like just some subpar Japanese CGI that happens and just looks ugly. But if you can get past that, so much of the story is so ridiculous and fun. I have such a good time watching it. This is one of the only shows on this list also I could restart from the beginning and just rewatch and have fun. Some of these are just hard to start again once you finish, some things like that. But this one you could totally do, I think. Breaking into the top 5, even though they're not listed in order like I said. This one is the one show that I was going to say has fighting in it and has combat, but is about so much more. It's about the main friendship. It's about the characters. It's about the world. No show on this list is as much about the world as this show. Made in Abyss came out back in 2017, and my girlfriend and I marathoned the entire show in 2 days, and it was gut-wrenching. No show hits... On this list, no show, I don't think outside of 1 or 2, hits nearly as hard as this show. Like Cells at Work, Haikyuu, Food Wars, those are all for just having a laugh, having fun, getting home from work. You know, you relax. Made in Abyss makes you fucking cry. And it's only because you love the characters and love the world and see what's happening, and it just feels so brutal, but you want to keep going because you don't want to see... You know that the characters don't want to give up, so you don't want to give up on them almost. This show is... No show on this list has ever made me want to look away from the screen in, like, sympathy pain, you know? You get that feeling when you watch videos on YouTube of the guy falling and smashing himself between the legs on a pipe, and you just feel it. Or like when the guy gets punched in the face and you just feel a shiver. No show makes you feel that more on this list than Made in Abyss. It deserves it. This show is probably the most gorgeous on this entire list. It's so beautifully animated. And the story is so, I don't want to say different, but there's no villain. There's antagonists, but the goal isn't, I gotta stop this guy. It's a girl who wants to find her mother. And the only thing standing in her way is a few other people along the way for other reasons, not because they want to stop her, but because of their own motives. And just the world, this hole in the world. I actually had a conversation with my girlfriend where I wondered if the Abyss was real, if it would be popular. And I believe that if the Abyss really existed, people would flock to it. The same people that are in this show who have this sense of adventure and wonder, even though they know that they are literally putting their lives on the line, in some cases cannot survive. Like the whole premise of the show where you can't go back up in the Abyss more than a few feet without feeling sick and getting progressively worse is just, I know people would be up for that. I'm sure. And it's one of those things where the characters all act realistically. There's characters who get desperate, and I don't even want to say anymore because now I'm actually freaking myself out a little bit because it's so tense in so many of these scenes. But man, no show is as gorgeous. The soundtrack is fantastic. The story is so simple and so down to earth. There's no team of 10 guys in Haikyuu. There's no cast of 20 rebels in Food Wars. There's no cells at work, the 10 different kinds of cells outside the main few. Like Overlord, the whole cast, Castlevania is the closest where there's only 3 characters that you are really the main characters, but in Made in Abyss it's just the 2. And man, dude, just if you feel like you can handle even shorter than, actually no, it's as long as Castlevania. If you want to watch a 1-2 punch, watch Castlevania and then watch Made in Abyss. You'll make your day. All right, only a few left, and this is the tied for... This is, I think, the show I watched longest ago out of all of these. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. This one I actually did watch years ago. This is one of the only shows where I didn't watch it in the last, 3 years. I actually watched Full Metal Alchemist years ago when I first got a Netflix account, and I loved it. This was one of my first anime that I really sat down and watched in the modern era. I watched Gundam Wing. You know, Gundam Wing is one of my favorite shows of all time, but it's not on this list because I recognize that it's not actually that amazing of a show. But in terms of things I love, Gundam Wing is on there. But there's the honorable mention right there for Gundam Wing. But in terms of just quality, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I never watched the original Full Metal, so I can't compare. I know that there's people who say both are great. The first is great. More people I think say the second is better. But either way, Brotherhood is just such a intricate story. There's so many things that fit together, and alchemy is so cool. The brothers' own journey, Alphonse and the armor, Ed with the arm, and the fear. Oh my god, I don't want to spoil anything, but this is one of the anime where the fighting is amazing. Like the things they do with alchemy are so cool, but the story is what really drives this one. Is these 2 boys who you are rooting for the whole time, and man, that early gut punch with the alchemist losing his license. Everyone knows what I'm talking about if they've seen the show already. But him and this show has such high highs and low lows. Like this is kind of similar to Made in Abyss, where you feel such a wave of emotions, and I feel like I'm just repeating myself because it's such a bare difference between why they're good. Like they're all good because they're great. Like Full Metal Alchemist is just such a awesome story of growing and adapting and kind of family almost. And it's a story that takes so many twists and turns. I mean, what not many other shows on this list have the main characters knowingly working with the villains and trying to subvert them. That just doesn't happen in these shows, and certainly in none of these is there any kind of subterfuge or anything like that. And it's all this underlying tension where there's stuff going on, but the heroes can't work against it. It's such a rare thing to balance, and it makes you care a lot. It makes you worry about what's going to happen. And then when everything seems so stacked against them, and oh man, it just, their dad and their mom and the ending of the show, this is another one that can be a tearjerker. And man, I'm sorry I'm just rambling, but Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, if you want to watch a show on this list that's actually completed, this and the number 1 slot are the only ones that are actually finished. So if you want a show that's done, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Oh, and the music's fantastic too. Number 3, this is where we get into the shows that just get bigger and better and more insane. This one is probably the most famous anime on the earth right now, but My Hero Academia well deserves to be on this spot. You know, as one of the shows on my non-animated list is going to show, hopefully, I usually don't like to just go with what the crowd says. I'm not the kind of I don't try to be a hipster, but it just kind of happens where the internet gets overblown about things and it just automatically puts me on the defensive. Unless I've had the taste of it first, like many of these shows. I didn't hear about them a lot, so I went into them with a fresh mind. But My Hero, my girlfriend and I started it during season 2, and man, almost no show hooked me as fast as My Hero Academia did. Considering what happens by the end of episode 3, never did I want to see someone succeed more than Deku that quickly. No, never was I more behind someone so fast than just hoping for Deku after everything that happens with All Might so early. And I mean, this show has just provided so many moments of like shouting in excitement right after crying in actual fear for the show. It's like that never happens. It's so hard to get emotionally invested in things these days, but this just so easily pulls you into these characters, this whole cast of 1A and All Might and Aizawa and Present Mike, because I love Present Mike. But I don't think any show on this list has as many moments that I could go back and rewatch. Like there's things that are cool, like Food Wars, Haikyuu, Overlord. I'd be happy to go watch a scene or two. You know, a handful of them are really awesome. But My Hero, the Deku's fight with Todoroki during the tournament, Muscular, United States, God, there's just so many that are just so, even now, every time I watch them, Nomu, the first Nomu, every time it just, I just feel my heart pounding and getting more and more excited, and I'm more ready to watch this thing. The show's gorgeous. The soundtrack is fantastic. I know all the words in Japanese to at least one of the intros. I just, no show makes it easier for you to just spend all your time caring about the show. And I can't wait for the next season. This is the only animated show I ever went to see animated movie I ever went to see in theaters. And I don't regret it for a second, even with the screaming anime girls. This is the one show that out of all of these I know doesn't need my help to continue, but I would still want to give my money just as a sign of I love this show so much. And I'm so pumped for season 4 to come back and blow us all away and show everybody. And let's see where this next arc goes now that the consequences of season 2 or season 3 really settle in. All right, only 2 left, and these next 2 are kind of in the same vein as My Hero in that they are big punchy. But speaking of punch, you can't say the word punch in anime circles without everyone thinking of the One Punch. See what I did there? Yeah. Sorry. One Punch Man is another show that is super short, but it's funny how many parallels it has to My Hero. You know, there's a hero agency, heroes are this big thing, and you got to register and yada yada yada. But whereas My Hero Academia is another Japanese show that focuses on kids with seeing what happens in adult society, kind of tertiary in that they see what their teachers do, but they don't see them outside of class. They don't see them when they're on their own or how they're living. Whereas One Punch Man takes you to Saitama's apartment where he spends a lot of his time just watching TV, watering plants, laying around in PJs. When there's nothing going on, what do heroes do? And this show kind of tackles that question along with other questions of what is it to actually be a hero? What is it? Is it about getting in front of the bad guys and earning lots of money and lots of prestige, or is it about actually saving people? And this show, I mean, as much as there might not be as many, tearjerker moments as there are in My Hero or other shows, but I'll always remember what happens with Moomin Rider during the Sea King. Like that's gut-wrenching to watch still. It's almost none of these shows outside of maybe My Hero have a scene where there's just so much about personal persistence and standing up in front of literal impossible odds. There's no personal MacGuffin here. There's no Deku finding new power within himself. There's just Moomin Rider exemplifies what it is to be a hero almost more than any other show in that scene. And I'm not trying to make it all about that scene. Like, Genos is so funny with all his stuff. The top 10 heroes are all such wackos, and most of them suck as people. Like, the whole final arc of that show, the fight with Boros, is one of my favorite fights ever. But it's scenes like Saitama getting blamed for the meteor, and Moomin Rider, and Genos talking to Saitama, and I don't know. Again, the show's gorgeous. Soundtrack is amazing. There's only so many things I can say that these shows are all so good in so many similar ways. They just when you're talking about all things that have 9 out of 10s in every department, it feels impossible to differentiate them much outside of just saying a few reasons why they're on the list. But One Punch, I can't wait for the next season of One Punch. I'm eager to see where this story goes, but I also just want to, because it's not about can you win the fight when Saitama is One Punch Man. It's about what does the fight mean, and what does the world do with that kind of knowledge? What happens in the world when someone that strong is around, and when he's not always there and all the other people around him? And it's such a different take where it's not about a physical journey. It's about a personal journey and a world journey than just making yourself, instead of just developing yourself and trying to make yourself better to overcome something. Saitama wants to get stronger, but he can't because he's already the strongest there is. So how does he become stronger instead as a person? And as the world changes, how does that impact him? Coming in at number 1 on my last animated show. This is the show that is probably the reason I care about anime. I mean, I watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood before this. Did I watch any of these others before this? No, I hadn't watched any of these other shows. I'd watched, like I said, Gundam Wing, Zoids as a kid, Dragon Ball. But the reason I like anime is because when I went back home after graduating college, and Friedman from the TNT podcast told me to watch, or no, not even him. I watched it before I had left school. Yeah. I watched it before I left school. It was one of the only anime I watched. Gurren Lagann. Gurren more I the ranks don't matter, like I said. The ranks on this list don't really denote quality. They kind of maybe marginally curve in the right direction, but there's no hard this is better than this. There's no easy answer of what is where, but Gurren probably deserves to be number 1. Gurren has Now this is kind of cheating, but Gurren almost kind of spoke to me when I needed it. And that sounds weird, but Kitan and Simone and the whole crew and Team Gurren and the ending, and I know I'm not really saying much, and I apologize, but that's what the point of these birthday videos are, is just kind of try to get my thoughts out there a little bit. But no show hit as hard as this did ever when I first saw this, I don't think. Like, there were, movies that matter and shows that matter, and like a lot of my non-animated shows I had seen, at least some of a handful. I'm realizing how many are new. A handful of about half the non-animated shows I had seen before this, but this was the real breakout and reason I like anime at all to this day is Gurren. The journey that Simone takes, Kitan, Kamina. I realized I said Kitan before when I meant to say Kamina. Sorry, they do too many Ks. Kamina is one of the most important characters in anything for me, I almost think. Not to get a little too personal, but I honestly think that as much as YouTube has given me a little bit of money, I've met a few people through YouTube over the years, but more than anything, I think doing YouTube videos, and especially doing Let's Plays, helped me kind of develop as a person, where I feel like if I hadn't gotten used to talking into this microphone years ago, I wouldn't have nearly as much confidence on like a person-to-person basis. I'm still not the kind of person who wants to get up and talk in front of people, but I remember, I know I'm getting off topic, but hey, this is my birthday video, so whatever. I remember one of my most vivid memories is when I was finishing up school in Utah. I was at my second college, and I was finishing up in, I think it was either my last or second to last semester. I was taking a technical writing course, and it was my highest grade I think I've ever gotten in school, but we had a final presentation where we had to do something, and for most of my life, I hated doing presentations as a kid. I couldn't do school presentations. I was miserable. And I remember I did my presentation, and I still don't know if it was a joke or a dare or honest comment. I hope I took it as honest, but I finished my presentation. I believe the only points I lost was like 2 points for going about a minute over time, but a girl raised her hand during my abbreviated questions thing, and she said, did you practice this at all? I said, nope. She said, because that was a really amazing presentation. And I just stood there shocked for a second. I said, thank you. And I'm getting myself distracted again. Shortly after, a few days later, I had a few months, weeks, something later. Maybe it was that same finals. I don't remember. But I had a presentation in another class, a CAD design class. And everyone was going up and just saying, hey, this is what we designed, and sitting back down. And I got up and I talked more about my design philosophy and design process than I did my actual design. And I was so scared that my presentation was wrong that I went to my professor afterwards and said, hey, I'm worried that I completely misunderstood this assignment and that I tanked that presentation. And he went, actually, you had the best presentation out of everyone in the class. And I know this sounds like humble brag, but and I apologize for that, but if I had seen myself being told those things when I was a kid in high school, I don't think I ever would have believed it. I wouldn't have thought it was possible. And I honestly think part of that comes from doing this YouTube thing, but that was also around the same time where I had seen Gurren for the first time and seen Kamina get up and tell Simone to don't believe in yourself, believe in the me that believes in you. And what happens with Simone's journey throughout the whole thing and the amazing clash at the end of that show, which is so ridiculously awesome. It's the epitome of ridiculously awesome for me. And it's impossible to know, but it almost feels like it's almost connected. I remember I gave the only other public speaking thing I've had the chance to do since then is public speaking. I remember my dad's parents had the 50th wedding anniversary, and they had a party for their family and friends and everything. And I stood up and said a short thing and did a thing with the other grandkids. And I remember walking back, and my mom and my grandmother were both crying. And I wonder how much it's all tied together, you know? And if nothing more on this list counts than Gurren in terms of things that I think influenced me and have made me a much more confident person in terms of like talking to people one-on-one. You know, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have at least one of the jobs I've had if I wasn't able to, you know, present well during interviews and stuff like that. And I practically have a job offer on the table right now if anything ever happens to my current job. So it's just, I wonder how much of that is tied together, you know, so. And it doesn't just go for Gurren, it kind of goes for this whole list. Sorry, I'm getting way off topic and I got to stop soon so I can make dinner. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been my top 10 plus 4 of my personal animated TV shows. Check back in part 2 to find out what non-animated shows have mattered to me almost as much as the anime. So, thanks for listening, everybody.